Hi everyone, it's Agnieszka from 5 Minute Language. Welcome to my channel. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. So today's video is all about how I learned English at home. So I've got separate videos about my English language learning journey. I have a very popular video about how to sound more British and another popular video about how I became fluent in English. But today I want to go into a little bit more detail about how exactly I personally learned English, and hopefully sharing this journey will help many of you learn English more effectively. So I'm going to start with the most obvious thing, which is vocabulary. And obviously learning vocabulary is part of learning any foreign language. But for me, that was the foundation of learning English. So I learned a lot of vocabulary. I had a vocabulary notebook where I would put all the vocabulary that I was learning and the translations and lots of examples. So I was actually translating into my native language, which is Polish, but you can do it differently. You can just write the definitions in English if you're more advanced. And I also included many different examples from different dictionaries of sentences that included those words or expressions that I was learning. And that way I could see the words in context, and I could also practice saying them in sentences. So the second thing is reading, and that's something I always emphasize when I talk about learning English or learning any other foreign language. Reading is incredibly important. So basically for me, reading was connected to learning vocabulary because I would take the vocabulary that I was learning from the reading materials that I was using. So I personally liked using English language magazines, and I was learning English before the internet really kind of developed properly. So I would, for example, buy a Newsweek or something like that, like a magazine from America or maybe from another English-speaking country. And I would read that magazine in a lot of detail, sometimes for many months. So I would have just one magazine, but I made sure that I read everything in it, that I absorbed as much as possible, and that I took as many new words and expressions as I could. So I did a lot of underlining. I would write the translations in the magazine, actually in the articles. I would underline things in different colors. So if it was a word, I would underline it in one color. If it was an idiom or an expression, I would highlight it in a different color. So I had lots of sort of annotations and colors and notes on those articles, and then I would keep them and review them again and again. So that way of practicing reading and learning vocabulary wasn't just about scanning. Scanning is a technique where you read for context, for gist, and you're just trying to understand what is going on. But this was in-depth reading. I was trying to understand as much as possible. I was trying to learn the words that I didn't understand. So sometimes, like I said, I would keep the same magazine for months, and I would read it over and over again until I kind of understood as much as possible. So with the reading, I started doing that before I was advanced. Obviously, the reading material was advanced. It was aimed at English native speakers. But I would read it even when I was at lower levels, which meant that often I didn't actually understand a lot in terms of the context. But I found it beneficial because I thought, learning new words was enough. And, you naturally progress. The more vocabulary you know, the more you are able to understand in terms of meaning. So I would definitely recommend that you do that you start reading things that are challenging to you rather than things that are easy, because that way you will really challenge yourself and you will motivate yourself to learn more and more. So learning collocations was actually another huge part of my journey to fluency in English. So collocations are basically groups of words that go together and they sound natural in English. So for example, when you say to take a shower, you don't say to do a shower, but to take a shower. So those words go together, they sound naturally, and they make up an expression that exists in natural speech. So when I was learning new words, I would always look them up in a collocations dictionary. So that's a dictionary that gives you all the different possible collocations that the word that you're looking up goes with. It will give you different prepositions or different verbs that the noun goes with, and you will be able to then transfer them into your vocabulary notebook and kind of familiarize yourself with them as well. If you write down examples of sentences, including those collocations, that's even better. I also read simplified novels, and when you're learning English, those novels are actually very widely available. So they might not be available in other languages, but English is actually really well catered for. So you can just search simplified novels, and I'm sure you will be able to find free material online. I was lucky to have access to an English language library where I lived, where there were different levels of simplified novels, from kind of pre-intermediate all the way to sort of upper intermediate. So before you tackle actual novels written in the English language, you might want to try simplified novels just to develop a little bit of confidence in the language. So when I became a little bit more advanced, I would say maybe upper intermediate, I started doing lots of exam preparation. So I was doing a lot of kind of practice exercises for various English language exams, mainly the ones run by Cambridge. So the first certificate in English, for example, which is kind of like an internationally recognized qualification in English. And they have a lot of mock papers that you can do. And I especially focused on the ones for reading and listening, because listening is always kind of an area for me where I sort of struggle a little bit. Even if I think that I am quite good at a language, listening is always an area where I struggle. So I did a lot of listening practice, a lot of kind of exercises and tests, and the same for reading. So reading exercises where you have to read for detail, for gist, and answer questions or multiple choice questions, that kind of thing. So I definitely recommend doing that as well. I did a lot of speaking to myself. I've always done that, even before I knew that was a language learning technique. So I would sometimes imagine that I was being interviewed because I'm a celebrity, or some kind of public person, that I'm giving an interview, and I would basically just speak in the same way as I'm talking to you guys now, or talking to my camera, and I would practice speaking that way, because I didn't have very easy access to native speakers. The only native speaker I knew was my English teacher. I used to go to classes twice a week, and that was the only kind of interaction I had, but obviously that was just for an hour and a half or so, in a group of people who also wanted to speak. So speaking to myself that way definitely helped me develop my confidence, my fluency, and my general speaking skills. So another thing I did to practice my English was I had pen friends, and I think you can still do this, online. I actually did it by writing physical letters to people. I had some friends in Ghana and in Hong Kong. And we basically exchanged letters. So you used to be able to buy those English learning magazines where people would advertise their postal addresses, and you could write them a letter to become kind of like a pen friend. And it was just a really nice thing. I always looked forward to getting those letters and replying to them. It was just fascinating, before I ever traveled to another country, I could do that from my own home, which was fantastic. I'm sure you can do that the same online these days, so I definitely recommend it. So today, like I said, when I was learning English, a lot of the tools and websites that exist today didn't really exist back then. So obviously you've got things now like YouTube and Netflix, and I have made videos recently about how to use Netflix and YouTube to learn foreign languages, including English. There is actually a nice Chrome extension for learning languages with Netflix that has some additional features for language learners, and I talk about that in my separate video, so make sure you check it out. I'm going to link it in the description box. But you also have things like free English learning apps, different people who teach English online for free. So there's a lot of different resources available these days. So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed listening to my journey. Let me know in the comments below if you're learning English and how long you've been learning for. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, it really means a lot to me. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!